After the dust settled at Road Atlanta, it was time for everyone to make their way to the Amish country at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. The familiar faces of Dan Rash and Brian Strodbeck held first and second respectively in GS class. The green fell at the distinct starting line on the backstretch as the Mustangs filed into madness without incident. In ST, Carl Williamson claimed pole, but ill-timed internet problems caused him to start from the pit lane. This meant James Stevenson assumed pole, with Alex Balau completing the front row. At the start, Arthur Chan's perennial bad luck struck early. After going 3 wide into the first corner, he took a vacation to China Beach. On lap 2, chaos ensued when the 49 Motorsports MX-5 of Dexter Castro was tipped by Stefan Maurienne. Cars scattered across the carousel to avoid the mess. The first and only caution was quickly over, and action resumed with Strodbeck making a bid for the lead. Meanwhile, Carl Williamson's red and black Miata mowed through the field in a mere 8 laps, managing to overtake an astounding 19 cars to reach the tail of the lead pack in 6th. An intense struggle between these 6 cars raged for much of the early stages. James Stevenson was the first of the top 3 ST cars to make his pit stop and relinquish the lead on lap 21. 3 laps later, Carl Williamson pitted and rejoined right as Stevenson made an error into turn 1. This mistake allowed Williamson into second with ease. The very same lap, William Randleman failed to make way at turn 11, and side-by-side contact was made between himself and the Englishman. The delay was just enough time for Alex Balau to jump Williamson in the pit stops and claim the ST lead. In GS class, Strodbeck also utilized pit stops to jump Rash for first, but the pace of the white Frito-Man car meant the gap would inevitably shrink. Just as Rash was arriving at the bumper of Strodbeck, his overclocked computer buckled under the demands. Number 35's race was over in a blink of an eye. This and Eric Smith's injury-induced retirement promoted Steve Browne to second and Andre Trago to third. On the ST side, Hang Ho Tao pounced for 6 when Arthur Chan got a bad exit out of turn 1. Chan fought back, and while heading into turn 4, the two made contact, and the orange and white machine spun in front of a helpless Josh Loitz. On lap 44, German Afanador got it all wrong, then made a sketchy return to the track, causing the lightest of contact with Arthur Hermont. The Brazilian drew the short straw in the scuffle and required repairs to his suspension. Alina Gomez eventually caught Afanador, and a fierce battle erupted. The Spaniard gave no quarter and forced Afanador off the track at the exit of the keyhole. German retaliated the following lap, but miscalculated his braking and sent them both into the sand. Down in 10th and 11th for ST, Antti Tuominen failed to slow his car enough and put yet another dent in the now battered MX-5 of Josh Loitz. With Rash unable to recover from his lost laps, Strodbeck's orange and blue Mustang romped to the checkered flag unchallenged. It was win number 2 for him in Season 3. Steve Browne followed home in second, and Andre Trago came in third. In ST, Alex Balau made it 2 in a row, solidifying the rookie as a championship contender. Carl Williamson and James Stevenson had no answer for the new threat, collecting second and third respectively. With the Midwest behind them, the clear air of upstate New York awaits the teams. Who will get the boot and who will stomp on the rest? We'll see today after 90 minutes of Watkins Glen. Welcome to Watkins Glen International. Today, this picturesque hilltop racecourse will play host to Round 6 of the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series, sponsored by Safe Craft Racing. And we'll bring it all to you live on the global SimRacing channel. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth today is the perceptive Ayrton Ellis. Welcome, Ayrton.
Hey, Joe. Very glad to be here.
Absolutely. Also with us is the humble Kevin Browne. Glad to have you here, Kevin.
Thanks, Joe. Looking forward to a great race at one of my favorite tracks.
Yeah, this is definitely always a track that brings up some exciting racing. And this is Conti Circuit's third visit to the Glen, actually. And though the track has divided the drivers' opinions, it has always created incredibly close and intense racing. And for more information on the circuit, let's actually hand it over to Ayrton Ellis. Ayrton?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. This very famous New York circuit is 3.4 miles long with 11 corners, and these drivers will be driving a 90-minute race around this draft-filled circuit. The previous winners of this track in GS class is Brian Strodbeck in Season 1 and Steve Browne in Season 2. In Season 1 in ST class, it was James Stevenson, and in Season 2, our very own Giancarlo Lenzi in ST. The track qualifying records is Brian Strodbeck in GS class with a 206.4 in Season 1. ST class, it was Carl Williamson with 211.4. Brian's not here with us today, but Carl seems to be back up there in the front during practice.
Yeah, he's put quite a quick time in there. And in fact, a lot of guys have put some really good times up at the top because of the draft. But, it's not just the racing and the times that are going to be close today. The points championship has also been incredibly close all season. And actually, let's go to Kevin. Kevin, could you tell us a little bit more about who's fighting for the crown up there?
Yeah, it's Brian Strodbeck and Dan Rash are leaders in first and second, with Strodbeck having a 2-point advantage after drops have been taken into account. And with Strodbeck not being able to make it for this race, we're certain to see a new leader, and we probably think that's going to be Dan Rash.
Yeah, and I see close behind them. It's not actually too far down to J.D. Baumgartner, only 9 points back from him. So even though those two have been, far and above the fastest guys, obviously they're not running away with it as far as points go. On the other side, we have the ST class with the MX-5 cars. Ayrton, what's the championship shaping up like over there?
Well, after a very exciting race at Mid-Ohio, James Stevenson has managed to come on top once the drop weeks have been implemented. Carl Williamson is 5 points behind in second, and Alex Bilal is a little more, 12 points behind James. And those top three have already used their one drop week, while Stefan Overgaard in fourth and Arthur Chan have not. So top three guys are still vulnerable to making mistakes.
And mistakes can be costly down the line. As we've seen, consistency is really going to come into play. We saw it last season, we saw it the first season, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a huge factor again this season. Well, as we said, since we're at Watkins Glen, we want to familiarize you guys with how to get around this track. So we have our very own Kevin Browne doing a lap. If our director, Giancarlo, could cue up the video for that. All right, Kevin Browne is getting ready to take us on a lap around Watkins Glen inside the GSRC Mustang. Coming down the front straightaway here, crossing the start-finish line, you're going to have a heavy braking zone coming into 1, which is a 90-degree right-hander. Get right up to that curb, but don't take too much. Now you're going to be able to go very wide on the exit. As you can see, you got a lot of concrete runoff. You're not punished for that. Then this uphill, you have to get as good as an exit as you can on turn 1 because you're flat to the floor for quite a while. Basically, you just want to carry as much speed as you can through these S's because you're going to come up to a possible passing zone as you get to this back straightaway. You might be able to use the draft. You're definitely going to be able to use the draft in the MX-5s. But another hard braking zone. Now, the inner loop presents an interesting challenge. It's very one-lined. You want to get the car rotated for the exit there. And then you'll come around the carousel, which is a long right-hander. There's a lot of banking, too, for a road course. It's very unusual. Careful not to clip the grass too much on the exit there. Then you got braking for this downhill left-hander. The car is probably going to want to push unless you got a very loose setup, which dumps you onto this downhill into the toe of the boot. Now, this is kind of a passing zone. Depends on the exit that you get. But the real important thing here is to carry your momentum because it's got a very long uphill straightaway. And if you come out a little too slow or in a gear too high, then you're just going to be very vulnerable because this is another passing zone coming up here. Hard braking into the heel of the boot. Make sure and stick to those concrete grooves that you'll see around the track. Those are really going to be a big guide. Then braking into this left-hander. Now, the car's going to push on entry, and then you'll go over the crest, and you'll see the car get loose right here. And there's a lot of guys that overcook it and spin the car there. And then coming into the penultimate corner, it's very, very fast, very tricky, but you just got to lift and then get on the acceleration, but don't clip the grass because you can spin once again. Then the final corner, Kevin got a lot of curb there, but mostly you just want to stay away from that outside wall while carrying as much speed as you can so that you can pass on in the front straightaway. That was a good lap there, Kevin.
Oh, thank you very much, Joe.
Better than I can do in the Mustang. Well, we're getting very close to the end of the Mustangs qualifying, actually, so we want to get a chance to talk to a few of the MX-5s real quick. Let's see if we can talk to Josh Loit, since he was a big story 2 weeks ago. Josh, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, man.
Welcome to the booth, Josh. You had an eventful race 2 weeks ago at Mid-Ohio.
Oh yeah, I certainly did. Started out, forgot to refuel my car for quali. I'm not going to make that same mistake this time. But I'm looking for another solid top 10 finish, and maybe even top 5 if I get lucky. But it's all going to be about attrition. Everyone's really close here, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, with the draft being a big factor for the ST cars, do you see yourself having a lot more door-to-door action? Do you think you can keep from making contact this time? Although I would add that you definitely were not at fault last time from what I saw.
I'm gonna try my hardest, that's for sure. It's gonna be tight the whole race, so we'll see what happens and see how it plays out. You know, there's probably gonna be packs that split up, and we'll just have to see how it turns out.
Absolutely. Well, I see STs are getting ready to start, so I'll let you go.
All right, thank you.
Well, good stuff from Josh there. Sorry we couldn't bring you a few more MX-5 drivers, unfortunately. It's we started just a little bit later than we anticipated, but we'll hopefully be able to hop on a few more of their cars during yellows and maybe get you some interviews and get some thoughts from more drivers. In the meantime, as the MX-5s takes the track, Kevin, what's the standings look like on GS now that they've all qualified?
Well, we have our pole sitter is Dan Rash sitting on a 206.713. In second place will be Steve Browne, our Season 2 champion, with a 207.449. Third place will be Eric Smith, 207.568. Andre Trego will complete the second row with a 207.612. And fifth place will be Nicholas Bailey with a 207.785. And the sixth place starter will be Alexis Molina with a 208.057.
And then behind Alexis, it looks like Russell Clayson is starting in 7th with a 208.1. Then Jonathan Auger is starting in 8th. German Afanador begins in 9th, and then completing the 5th row in 10th is J.D. Baumgartner. Then behind them, Jason Breifogel brings up 11th. Then Phil Schrader, I made sure and say that right this time, Phil. I apologize for last week's mispronunciation. Phil is starting 12th. Then Arthur Hermont is starting 13th. Chris Burt in 14th, Fred Masters in 15th, and Chris Duffy in 16th. Now, I know we have a couple Mustang drivers waiting in the wing to talk to us now that they're ready. Kevin, who do you think we should drag in here for us?
Well, let's see if we can't get our pole position qualifier Dan Rash in here.
Alrighty, let's talk to Dan. Dan, can you hear us?
Loud and clear, Joe.
Dan, you're starting on pole yet again this week. Obviously, a lot of the talk about this race has been with the draft battles that are going to take place between the ST cars. Now, I know it doesn't have as big of effect with the Mustangs, but do you see that being allowing certain guys being able to hang with cars that are faster than them?
Yeah, I think so, especially on the backstretch, coming up through the S's and all the way down that long backstretch where we get all the way up into 5th gear. You're going to be able to gain quite a bit of time there. I don't know if it might be a whole second, but a good fraction of a second. And then on the front stretch, you won't be able to gain a lot, but probably enough to be able to put your nose inside in turn 1.
And that's definitely going to be a very important passing zone throughout the race, I'm sure. Now, 2 weeks ago, we saw you have a really unfortunate exit. Have you solved your computer problems?
I think so. Luckily, I had some help from James Stevenson after the race, and he pointed me towards a couple things. I did a couple 12-hour stability tests, and currently my rig is still pretty overclocked, but I'm 13 hours Prime 95 stable, so that should be good enough for the race.
Let's hope so. All that's just a little bit above my head, I have to admit. Kevin, do you have any questions for Dan?
Yeah, Dan, that is a storming qualifying time, and with your two primary championship contenders, Brian Strodbeck missing this race and JD Baumgartner qualifying 10th, what's your strategy for this race so far? Are you really going to push hard or try and really take it easy and maybe be susceptible to Steve Browne drafting you?
I think at this point I'm going to try to take it easy. I want to see if I can finish this race without any incidents. But, if Steve pushes me pretty hard, I'll have to step up the pace. The most interesting place on the track, I think, is whenever we get too wide through the S's, especially at the top of the S's. I can see some Mustangs getting caught out there because it's kind of a deceptive corner. You might look at this track and think that the bus stop is the hot spot for crashes, but the bus stop looks difficult, and it is difficult, so people kind of treat it accordingly. But going up through the S's, they look like just long sweepers that are pretty easy. But it's deceptive because we're going so fast that it's really difficult to go too wide, and you definitely can't make it without letting off. So I expect to see a Mustang or two push wide, and that left-hander at the very top of the S's, I expect him to push wide to the right and kiss that wall there. I think one or two Mustangs will probably be collected in that, whether it's Mustang versus Mustang or when they're trying to overtake an MX-5 through there.
One further question for you is, how's your tire wear seeming? It sounded like you weren't seeing very much tire wear up in your fronts, which is a little unusual, I gotta say.
Yeah, the car seems really balanced. The Freedom Main Radio team set me up a really good car last race at Mid-Ohio, and then all it took this week was a little bit of an anti-roll bar change at the back, and I'm good to go. Very, very neutral, and the tires wore really well. I did a full fuel stint in practice, burned off all 9.3 gallons. And for all the laps that I did, the car was very consistent. Only a slight bit of fall off and grip available. But as far as front to rear balance was great. I had 89% on the front left and 90% on the rear left. So I'm pretty happy with it. It seems like, if push comes to shove and we don't have to take tires here, I wouldn't sweat like I would at another track.
All right, well, best of luck out there today, Dan.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, let's hope we get an exciting race since Dan doesn't have his usual competitor in Brian to be there with him. But we've also got, I see Andre Trago, our fourth place finisher, hanging out. So let's drag him in the booth and have a little quick talk. Andre, can you hear us?
Yeah, sure can.
Andre, you've qualified fourth, which is pretty good. I notice you are also definitely up there in practice times. So are you feeling a little more competitive this week compared to prior races?
Yeah, we'll see. I've always got along with this track. It's one of my favorites. So I actually am running the baseline setup. Oddly enough, I got rid of all my setups, and the baseline seemed to be putting down some better times for me. Eric was saying he just can't keep it or make it last. So I'll see what I'm in for. But yeah, it feels pretty good.
Now, we were talking to Dan a little bit about trouble spots on the course, and he mentioned, the usuals such as the bus stop and whatnot. But he said he was worried about the S's and cars trying to go too wide. Are you at all worried about running into some trouble there, or what other spots around the course do you think we'll see some action?
Yeah, the S's were the first thing that popped into my mind when you started talking about that. I think that's going to be one of the key areas to keep an eye on. The GS drivers sometimes get a little impatient there and try to press a pass that shouldn't happen. But yeah, we'll see. Those are the two big ones that I can think of.
Andre, you're in the midst of quite a bit of a qualifying battle there with cars only a tenth of a second away from you in either end. Are you guys going to try and team up and get a draft pack going to maybe give something for Dan Rash here, or do you think it's going to be cutthroat from the get-go?
Yeah, we're going to try and stick together and not let Dan get away from us, so that's kind of the plan. You hit the nail right on the head.
All right, well, best of luck trying to do that today.
All right, thanks, guys.
Well, that's some informative stuff. I definitely, as soon as they started talking about the S's, I have to agree. I remember getting into some hairy situations. It never really crossed my mind how difficult of a place that is to try and make something happen. So, and you know that I think will come into play as well with the multi-class stuff going on around here, with Mustangs getting impatient with MX-5s and wanting to get by before that long back straightaway. Ayrton, you've driven in both classes around here. Where are you expecting to see some problems, probably for the ST cars, actually?
Well, actually, surprisingly, I think the boot can cause some troubles in the MX-5 class. I raced here last season, and in the MX-5, I had a lot of trouble in some of the corners in the boot, especially the first and second one. I found that I spun a few times during practice and qualifying. So running too wide will be pretty difficult, and when you're running a big train, it can get pretty chaotic.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out that the exit of the boot, turn 9, that crest, I've seen a number of cars go quite light over there, and in any series pretty much lose it and either spin into the wall or just kind of half spin and lose some positions. So I wouldn't be too surprised, especially early on, if someone gets a little too eager and we see maybe a bit of a pile-up if guys don't stay patient. So we'll have to keep an eye on those areas. And let's talk about some of the other stories that are going on, actually, as we're completing. We've got about 6 minutes left of the ST qualifying, so we got a little bit of time to fill. Now, Bilal in the ST class has really started to make his stamp on this series, and Ayrton, you talked about this a little bit before we went to broadcast. He is suddenly coming to the front and really making himself a serious competitor in the championship.
Yeah, and it's always surprising to see a rookie in a series like this with long races and pitch strategy, especially in the MX-5 field, to see a rookie be able to get the hang of it so quickly. His pit stop strategy and his pace has just been extremely good, and he's really showing Carl Williamson, James Stevenson, all those top guys what he could do, and that he's a primary contender for the win every race.
Yeah, and I can tell that he's very quickly adapted to this series. We didn't see a whole lot of him, although he was definitely up there in pace in the first few races. But then, you know, at Barber he got that podium, and then I guess since Barber he's just been on top. So he's really come to the fore. And you know, what's interesting is we really haven't seen too much of the rookies other than Bilal up at the front. Elliot Huffman has been up there a little bit, but not a whole lot lately as far as his face in the front runners.
Yeah, and some other names like Joshua Leutz and Patrick Gallagher. Those two guys had very good races fighting for the top 5 at Mid-Ohio. But besides that, we still have William Randleman, who was leading at Mosport. The competition for the rookies hasn't been that great. Mostly veterans of the series that are up there in the top 10.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Randleman, because he's been a bit of an interesting story, and I don't want to pick on poor William too much, but we were talking about him a little bit before, and he's kind of gaining a bit of a reputation of having contact with other cars pretty frequently.
And that's definitely just a matter of, I would say, inexperience. I used to have a lot of instances with other drivers, and I know another driver, Dexter Castro. He has the pace, but he always seems to get into trouble, and I think that's just finding out where to be at the right time and when to make a pass and when to give room. So I think it's just a matter of inexperience for Randleman.
Yeah, and you know, I will say that there is a bit of luck involved in it, because I know in Season 2, when I was racing in the STs, I had, I think, contact with another car in pretty much every single race, but managed to get away from it pretty clean. Either they were 0Xs or just, you know, we both of us managed to hold it together. So I think some of that also has to do with, you know, a quick apology and just diffusing the situation can do wonders. And Williams starting to, I think, kind of learn that, and so have a few other guys who've maybe gotten a bit into the wars. So we say this a lot, but every race is not a bubble unto itself. You really have to be thinking down the line and thinking relationships with everybody else, because you're not racing there by yourself. You're racing with everybody else on the track, and you have to be friends even though you're competitors. So that'll be something to watch out for. Making sure that everybody stays clean with the draft, as we keep saying. That's gonna be, there's gonna be a lot of close racing. So let's see. We've got about 2 more minutes till things are up. We haven't talked a whole lot about the track, other than the guide and maybe a little bit of the hot spots. This is definitely a unique track. It's a very old school track. As we keep calling it a draft pack, a draft pack track. Sorry, way too many rhyming words for me. And Ayrton, tell us a little bit about what that means in the ST cars, because that's obviously way more important for these lesser powered cars.
Well, the track consists of a lot of fast corners and then a lot of pretty medium to long straights. So especially in the MX-5, having fast corners, getting a good exit is important, and staying in that draft is very important. And especially the corner, the exit of turn 1 and going through the S's and coming to the chicane, the most important draft point on the track. And that's where we're going to see a lot of MX-5 drivers trying to make a pass from the intense effect of the draft.
Yeah, and the bus stop is quite tricky to go too wide into, so you're going to see a few tangles, and you're also going to see, I think, some games of chicken. Who's going to be brave enough under the brakes, who wants to stay in it. Some guys are going to consider discretion the better part of valor and just let someone have the spot, because with the draft being there, you can always if you're close enough in pace, you can come back and challenge them. And cars are getting very, very close to being done. The checkered flag has fell, but everyone's completing their lap, so we'll get to the qualifying order in the ST in just a second. In the meantime, real quick, one thing I want to touch on is we've seen some very fast drivers we've expected to be up towards the front, just not doing well this championship season, in both classes, actually. Both, whether it's because of bad luck or bad strategies, that these guys just haven't been up there. Arthur Chan is one of those guys. Dexter Castro, you mentioned him. Antti Tuominen is pretty fast, but hasn't really been able to make too much of a dent. And GS class, Kevin, there's a couple guys that we'd expect to be a little higher up. German Afanador, Russell Clayson's usually pretty fast. Last season's champion, Steve Browne, he hasn't really been fighting up front much.
Well, we do know that with Steve Browne that the first couple of tracks in the series are the weakest tracks for him, and he was pretty happy once we got to Mid-Ohio, because he felt like we were going to see his best tracks and he was going to be able to perform a little better. So we're hoping that his second place at Mid-Ohio continues for him. He's able to get some more good finishes out of this up top. Russell Clayson and German Afanador both have kind of been struck a little bit by having incidents at just the wrong time, with the mid-pack of the GS field being so talented and so deep. Just the smallest mistake can have huge consequences, and both these guys have really seen that hurt their championship hopes this season. So they definitely need to, I think, maybe play a little more cautious so that they can stay out on track and keep that track position so they can have a better finish.
Yeah, and we always talk about how important strategy is, so those guys have kind of got to get that worked out. And we've started to see, I'm glad you mentioned them having to stay out a little bit later. We've been seeing that start to work for the GS cars. The Mustangs have kind of learned how to make the late pit stops work for them. So I'd like to see some more guys maybe mix things up in that way, especially maybe trying to get the lead a lap bonus. Well, the qualifying is now officially over for ST cars. Ayrton, would you like to tell us what the top 10 look like over there?
Well, on pole is, no surprise, Carl Williamson with a 213.036. Behind him, only 1/10 behind, is James Stevenson. And then just a few thousandths off him is Stefan Overgaard in third. Arthur Chan is in fourth. Antti Tuominen in fifth. Then Elliot Huffman lines up next to him in sixth.
And behind him is Josh Leutz in seventh. Then eighth is Hang Ho Tao. Then we have Patrick Gallagher completing ninth. Then GSRC's very own Richard Losper qualifying 10th, so good on him for that. Chris Moran qualified 11th, and then 12th is Eric Biggs.
Stefan Moran qualified 13th. Then next to him is William Randleman. Then Michael Hayton, Matthew Reinhold, David Whammond, Tim Brokaw, Tom Eckline, and Hiro Kanaya to round out a field of 37 drivers.
So one thing that you mentioned was Carl Williamson was on pole, and he was actually on pole last week. We saw this a bit in the recap of 2 weeks ago at Mid Ohio. He didn't actually get to start on the pole, so I believe he's actually out there now. Let me check real quick. It doesn't look like he's lined up. That was sort of a random thing. But his computer crashed on him, or his internet went out, or something to that effect, and he actually had to start from pit lane. So hopefully we can see him see what he can do from the front. Yeah, now he's lined up right now.
And because of the odd number of GS drivers, the ST field will have to swap during the pace lap. So all the drivers are going to switch from left to right on their starting order.
Yeah, that's something a bit unique to this series. They try and separate the classes, so they got to try and figure that out. But they usually do pretty good with that. As they're doing the pace lap, because it's going to be a long pace lap, let's talk about a few of the other stories that we need to consider. Let's see. Actually, speaking, of the long lap times, that I think is going to be important, especially people trying to stay on the lead lap, get that bonus. And also, Kevin, you talked a bit before the race about the loss in pit lane. What is that going to look like? Because this is a very long pit lane.
It's a long pit lane, and it's a slow pit lane, and it takes out the most important corner on the track, turn 1. And so these drivers are going to see up to about a 75-second loss in time just by going through pit lane and getting a full tank of fuel. So they're definitely going to need to keep an eye on the splits between themselves and the rest of the field, so that they can make sure that they come back out in clean air and give themselves a push. And making their pit stop at the wrong time just on track position alone could be the difference between a first place and a 10th place position today.
Yeah, and the talk of clean air, that's typical of a road course and wanting to try to pit and get away from everybody else. But with the draft being so strong and powerful here, do you think we'll see some guys maybe try to play some team tactics and pit together?
It's possible. It depends a lot on how the drivers feel about their car and their car's balance behind somebody else. It is possible in the Mustang to pick up some aero wash in some of these fast corners. And if your car is not set up for that, or you don't feel comfortable with that, that can really hurt you very much and maybe wind up torching your front tires a little bit more than you'd like to. So again, it really depends on each individual driver and kind of how they see their race going. Some drivers may find out that they're much faster in a tow or pulling another car, and so they probably will try and work together. But all that remains to be seen, as these guys have 90 minutes to sort their strategy out.
Yeah, and one thing that I do want to note that was pointed out to me a little bit earlier, this is Steve Browne and Phil Schrader's best qualifying this season, from what I understand. So congratulations to both those guys. Hopefully they can make good on that. One of the guys, speaking of the upper reaches, I'm looking at Eric Smith. He's qualified 3rd. We've seen him usually be up there in qualifying, but he's only made good on that a couple times so far in the race. And actually, he had to exit due to injury last time, from what I understand, Kevin.
Yeah, he said his knee was bothering him, and he sure left the race in a hurry, so it must have really been painful for him. So we're definitely hoping that he's going to be able to push the race or stay with the race for the whole distance as we approach the last corner on track.
Yeah, the pace car is starting to lead them up to the final corner here. He's going to duck in very soon. Really hoping that Eric can make it through. We've seen a couple cars retire in similar fashion. Carl Williamson did at Road Atlanta. Now the pace car ducks in, and there's the green flag now for the GS class. They're taking off down the front straightaway, heading into that important passing zone of turn 1. Is anybody going to try and get gutsy in here? Let's take a look. Looks like Nicholas Bailey's looking on the inside just a little bit, but everybody's pretty much staying in line. Arthur Hermont takes a little peek. Cars go wide onto that wide concrete exit there. Now they're filing into the S's. What's the ST class looking like, Ayrton?
A separate start of the ST class has gone underway. A huge traffic jam for Arthur Chan. Actually, a big bump between I think those are drivers of Hein Ho Tao and Elliot Huffman going into turn 1.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but caution is out. We actually had an accident between Chris Duffy and Phil Schrader coming up the S's. So very quickly, it comes true what some of the Mustangs were predicting. And let's see if I'm wondering if we could get a replay of that. All right, we're going to check out the replay and see what happened here. It looks like Phil Schrader got in contact with Fred Masters and got sideways, and then poor Chris Duffy just had nowhere to go and just got collected in it all. So not the start that they were hoping for. They've got a bit of damage, and that will hurt them in the long straightaways, but they could still come back from this. I don't think we're going to see a long yellow because nobody's really got to come back around and get their laps back. So pace car is going to pick them up coming around here. Let's, while we're waiting for that to go, why don't we go to break real quick? But before we do that, we just want to make a mention that we want to offer condolences for an unfortunate death that has happened recently. A professor of mine, Elspeth Kidd, has passed away recently, and we would like to pay respects to her. She obviously had a huge influence on myself as a filmmaker. And we just would like to have a moment of silence before we go to break to pay respects for her and her family and friends.
Lights are off.
Welcome back to Watkins Glen. We had an early caution here in the 90-minute race for the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series, but we are getting ready to go green once again. Real quick, I just want to note that Carl Williamson did have to give up the lead and go into the pits because his brakes were spiking, according to him. He had an off during the pace lap, and he did get back in time to be on the lead lap, so he'll have to make another trek from the back once again. Pace car peels off as Dan Rash takes him to the green flag, which drops now. Steve Browne is close behind him. Eric Smith is looking a bit on the inside of Steve Browne, although Steve Browne could be looking on the outside of Rash. Let's see, is he going to try and outbrake him? There's a lot of cars trying to outbrake one another in the Mustangs coming into turn one. It looks like Andre Trego. Oh, I'm sorry, we've got a spin. That's Alexis Molina, and who is that? Andre Trego is on his lid. Are we going to get a caution? There it is. Let's check that out on replay. It looks like Molina drifted a little wide and collected Andre and into the wall. They went very hard. So that's the end of Andre's race. He's going to, or well, I would assume so. He's got a lot of repairs. In fact, his car is smoking in the pits currently, so I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get back out there. Alexis is still going, but he's going to have a lot of repairs as well. I mean, that was a very hard hit to the inside, Kevin.
Yeah, I think Alexis is done. He's got significant issues on all four corners, and he's crabbing down the track as it is. So one moment's mistake has unfortunately ended two races for Andre Trego and Alexis Molina.
Well, after, let's see, we're on lap 4 currently. After 4 laps, we've completed about a third of a lap of green flag racing. I don't think we expected this one to be quite so yellow heavy, so hopefully we can get back to green soon here. I'm sure the marshal is going to be chastising everybody to try and keep it clean so we can get everybody spaced out, get some action going on. Now we have had a few other people pit. Fred Masters and Phil Schrader also had pit stops last time during the yellow because they were involved in the first caution. Ayrton, did we have any other ST cars hop into the pits? I can't completely recall.
Well, in the first caution, we had Chris Moran from the top 10 pitting. I'm not sure for the reason for that as well, but this definitely gave a chance for Carl to get back up to the group because he was almost half a track behind at that green flag start, so this is good news for him.
Yeah, this will allow him to keep up. Now, let's see. I don't think the ST car has even really got to get across the start-finish line, so I'm not sure if Carl Williamson managed to pass anyone. In fact, yeah, he's still catching the pack from what I can see on the screen.
Yeah, he was very far behind, and only just came out in front of the pace car to make sure that he didn't go a lap down, so very lucky for him, and hopefully his brakes are working okay, that he can be running back up to the lead pretty soon.
Carl is probably going to be ruining the problem after problem that's happened to him because he's really had the pace to be one of the top contenders. He is actually second in the points, and he's only 5 points behind, so I guess he is a top contender technically, but I feel like he could have done so much more by now. We saw at Road Atlanta, he had to exit out because he couldn't endure. He had a bit of a rough night before, and just the endurance came into play, and he had to call it quits. And then, as we said 2 weeks ago at Mid-Ohio, he had to come from the back, and he just about had the win. He finished second place, but he had a bit of a run-in with William Randleman, and that set him back there. Carl is actually headed into the pits again from the information that I'm getting. And Andre Trego is actually behind him currently on the standings from what I'm looking at. But I'm pretty sure, I'm amazed that Andre is still sitting in the pits. I can't believe that he's going to try and repair that car. But, you know, I guess every point counts.
Well, one thing I would like to note is I went and looked back at this incident we just had amongst our GS class cars, and it looks like the whole thing was actually kicked off by Russell Clayson. He got into the rear of Alexis Molina and wound up shoving Alexis Molina wide into turn one. So Russell Clayson, our demon breaker, just got in a little too deep this time and set that off, and he's probably going to have to stop and get some repairs because his front end is really mangled up as well.
Well, they don't call him Cannonball for nothing, I suppose. He's living up to his nickname, I guess, just trying to not let that slip by too much. We have 36 cars in the field, actually, by the way, and so far everybody is still trying to stay in it, though that is questionable with at least one of them. 12 of the GS cars are still amongst each other in the lead pack. Fred Masters and Phil Schrader are amongst the ST cars, so they're going to have to play a pretty little dance trying to get up through these guys.
Well, it shouldn't be too difficult. The Mustang has quite a bit of an advantage over the ST MX-5s on these long straights, so as long as they keep their heads and wits about them, they should be able to move through the back of the field pretty easily.
Yeah, patience is going to be very important for both of them. I think we talked about a little bit before the race that they've just got to wait for the right straightaway, and it should be easy pickings, as you said. We are about 20 minutes in, even though we're only 5 laps in at this pace, so we're doing about, what is that, 4 minutes per lap, so not quite record pace yet. But we haven't touched on it yet. Pit stop window, as usual for these 90-minute races, is between 30 minutes and an hour in, so it's still a little too early for anybody unless they think we're going to continue to get cautions like this, Ayrton.
Yeah, it is very surprising after a very good start with all the other races in the season. This has been a season very not full of cautions. We've only had at the most 3 cautions in a race, so very clean drivers this year, and even though most of them are veterans, I think a lot of them have figured out how to race clean and safe and to please the marshals.
Yeah, and it's worth noting Elliot Huffman has made a pit stop, so has Fred Masters. Fred was he might have just been topping off. Didn't see him get tires, so I think that possibly he was just getting a little splash and dash, maybe repairing a last bit of damage that he wasn't able to repair before. We'll have to keep an eye on those guys. They're kind of lucking out with the number of cautions we've got going on. They can still hang on to things here. We should be going back to green this lap, I believe. Yes, I do not see the caution lights on the pace car currently, so we should be back to green very soon, guys.
Well, let's hope we can stay green for more than turn one. I'd really like to see a full lap here at green because this is an exciting track to run at, and these guys are really kind of ticking me off a little bit. So let's see some fun out here.
Yeah, shaking our fists at them, and you can see on your screen as we look at the back straight just how many cars are in this field. So it can be tough with just the depth of and number of cars that you've got. So that's why it's so important to just wait it out a little bit on these early laps. Yes, you're going to get more opportunities to pass, but at what cost? It's weighing your risks, as it always is in racing. When is it worth it to try and roll the dice? Well, they're coming through the toe of the boot currently. That uphill right-hander that's probably going to see its fair share of risks happen in both classes. And Dan is continuing to lead. I'm just going to run down the top 5 of the GS class real quick here, and we'll do the same for the GS. Dan Rash is in first. Steve Browne is currently holding second. Then we've got Eric Smith in third. Nicholas Bailey is bringing up fourth. Nicholas is doing pretty good this race, it seems. And then Russell Clayson brings up fifth. Ayrton, what is the top 5 of the ST currently looking like?
After Carl having technical issues and having to drop to the back of the grid, James Stevenson is now in front with Stefan Overgaard right behind him, Arthur Chance in third, and Antti Tuneman in fourth, and Heino Tau in fifth.
Now this is a good opportunity for Stefan. We've seen him up towards the front in pretty much every race so far, I believe. And he hasn't won a race yet this season, even though he's led a number of laps. Doesn't quite have the pace to keep up with guys like James Stevenson and Arthur Chan. But he's definitely got the intelligence, he's definitely got the skill, so I'd like to see him get a little bit up there. I'm getting information that Alexis Molina has exited the pits, which the pace car is about to do the opposite and enter, and he does so right now. So Dan Rash leads them away to the green flag, which falls now. And I've already see Russell Clayson making a move, but he waits until after the start-finish line. He's going to have it cleanly into turn 1 there. And looks like German Afandador is going to follow him. We got a bit of a backup. That's JD Baumgartner looking at between them. But German got, let's see, I'm sorry, that's Russell Clayson, who's now looking at Nicholas Bailey. He's really close behind him as they come up through the S's there.
Yeah, the SD class very clean for a start. Not many too wide action in turn 1. Still some people close to bumpers. Some people a little slow in turn 1 from making attempts. But at the moment, James has got a nice little lead ahead of Stefan Overgaard.
Yeah, but not far behind them is Antti Tuominen and Arthur Chan, who are pretty close together. But Antti backs out and lets Arthur have it without much challenging them. I think the guys are getting the idea. They got a long race to go. Meanwhile, in front of them, taking a peek back up at the GS class and see what's going on. And actually, Steve Browne is pretty close to Dan Rash at the moment. In fact, he takes a look as they come into the boot. So he's already fancying the lead as they come around about halfway through lap 7. Kevin, we're seeing an early battle for the lead already.
Yeah, Steve Browne is definitely looking very racy right now. He actually went side by side into the inner loop with Dan Rash, so he seems like he's got something for Dan Rash right now, and maybe wants to take advantage of it as we see him tucking in right here as they approach the heel, and this can be a good passing zone if you can set it up right. But I'm glad to see that Steve kind of took some caution there, because it's probably a little early in the race for being too aggressive at this moment.
Yeah, I think that Steve's maybe taken a page from the book of our Brian Strodbeck. Brian in the past has gotten in front of Dan and kind of held him up and made a huge battle out of it by just holding pace in front of him and just not giving an opportunity. So I'm willing to bet that Steve maybe thought, if I can get in front, even though I'm not faster, maybe I can just make something happen for the rest of this race. In the meantime, they're starting to space out, so he's lost a little contact. Let's look a little bit farther back and see if we can find a battle. Ayrton, is there anything going on in the ST side of things? Is anybody dicing?
Yeah, actually, Arthur Chan getting a very good run out of the final corner. He's right on Stefan Overgaard's bumper. But coming out of turn 1, these guys are probably going to catch up to James Stevenson as Stefan actually goes very wide and lets Arthur get on the inside coming into the S's. And this will give James a little break, but Arthur should have the position right about now. And now Antti Tuominen trying to slip to the right side of Stefan.
And Stefan is vulnerable to Antti Tuominen right now, so that was bad on Stefan's part. Going into that first corner, you can't go too hot, even though you want to carry as much momentum as you can for this straightaway, because it's flat out all the way to the inner loop, which they're approaching now. Stefan took a little bit of look on the inside of Arthur Chan, but he couldn't quite make it, so he backs back in the line. And that is for second and third. I'm getting word that Williamson and I believe Williamson and Randleman were having a bit of a battle. I'm sorry, Williamson and Wammond.
Yeah, Elliot Huffman, Carl Williamson, and Chris Moran are 3 of the top runners that are trying to get back through the field. So they're having to dice through all these back marker drivers at the moment, and they're fighting for position, so these guys don't really give up, as Michael Hayton actually looking to the inside of Carl Williamson after being passed to the entry to the bus stop. Looks like he's going to give up the position now, and looks like Chris is going to try to get run on him now.
And that made Hatton very vulnerable on this straightaway. So yeah, Chris has definitely got this pretty easily unless he makes a boneheaded breaking point here. Let's see if he can do it. Yep, he's got it clean. Chris is a very good driver, very clean driver, so I'm not surprised. Carl is starting to make this carve through the field his signature move. You could almost say he's maybe carving through the field or something. I don't know. I'll just shut up about that now. I did see that Richard Losberg was having quite a bit of a battle, and he is currently holding 7th, so he's moved 3 spots up already, and we're only 8 laps in. Good on Richard.
As Arthur Chan has managed to... oh, wait, we actually saw the pass that he made on Stefan, but right now he's right on the bumper of Stevenson coming out of turn 1, so this is going to give him a great opportunity using the draft to get a run on the bus stop.
Now, we've seen a draft battle between these two cars for these exact same positions before, and in fact it was Arthur that was behind James Stevenson in that same battle. That was at Road Atlanta. Let's see if he does the same thing over again. He's going to look to the outside as he has a little bit of a connection blink. So no, Arthur is not going to play it patient this time. They're coming into the inner loop. He's got the outside on this first part. Is he going to try and hold on to it? James Stevenson lets him have it. So James Stevenson is the one that blinks.
And we have a battle for 6th place in GS class with German Fanador and JD Baumgartner. They just went side by side through the inner loop and in through the carousel. And JD's definitely looking like the faster car right now, as German is the lead car in a pack that has lost the gap to the front runners. So I think JD has got a fast car, and he wants to get on and get a move going because he can see that lead group slipping away from him.
Yeah, and JD usually is amongst the front runners, so I'm going to have to agree with you on this one, that he's really got to be kind of sweating that he's losing contact like that. He's going to want to get this done as soon as he can. He's going to get an opportunity if he stays a little bit patient. I'm betting you that he's going to do something into turn 1 if he gets a good run there.
Turn 1 is a great place if you can make it happen, but it tends to set you up for an easy overtaking maneuver into the inner loop, so strategy is important here. And with these guys potentially looking at putting 90 minutes on their boots, being aggressive into turn 1 is a bad idea, since it really stresses your left front tire, and it looks like it's going to be a moot point this time around, as JD's just a little too far away in turn 1, approaching turn 1, but maybe he'll be able to get a good run out of it and set himself up for the inner loop this time.
Yeah, he's got a few car lengths, which lessens as they go under braking for the 90-degree right-hander of turn 1. JD's 49 Motorsports machine closes up a little bit after that corner, so I think you're right. I think he was trying to get that run and gun on him. That draft is going to pull him as they come up through this uphill S as the cars slide around that left-hander and then around the right-hander coming to the back straightaway. JD continues to close in. They're reaching the back stretch now. He's within less than a car length, and we've got a yellow flag once again.
An accident between Antti Tuneman and the GS driver Fred Masters in turn 1. Antti got spun around and hit the wall right near the entry of turn 1.
And it might have been it looks like it was a connection problem. I actually could not see Antti until the contact happened. I'm not sure what the replay is showing. Yeah, it's looking like a connection issue. Oh, and Antti almost collected, that was Stefan Overgaard in front of him. And it looks like there was another accident even after that. Oh, goodness. This is not the cleanest race we've seen from these guys. And on a track like this where you've got a lot of long straightaways, I'm honestly a little bit disappointed in everybody not being able to keep out of each other's ways. Stefan Overgaard collected a GS car for the second half, and it looks like it was Phil Schrader, actually. So, man, people are going to have to keep their eyes open a little bit more. We were talking a little bit before the race, guys, that we're pretty sure there have been no protests so far this season for at least 2 races, which is very good. It means that, everybody's giving each other room and people are apologizing. No one's getting up in arms. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that we're going to see a protest or 2 after this race.
Yeah, this is a little frustrating. We saw a lot of contact in the first couple races of the season, and then they kind of cleared out at Barber, which definitely surprised us. And I think we were thinking that these guys had kind of gotten it all sorted out, and we're going to start running clean green laps through the rest of the season. But I'm not sure what it is, but tempers seem to be flaring here at Watkins Glen today.
Yeah, we could hear over the radio that someone was not happy. I believe it was actually Fred Masters complaining about Tuominen appearing right in front of him like that. It's sort of considered bad form for those not familiar with sim racing to continue racing with your connection going in and out. You kind of need to get yourself out of the way in case you reappear where someone doesn't expect. A bit unique to this form of motorsport. I think it's worth noting, though, that we're 33 minutes in. We're on lap 11, so betcha that we're going to see a number of guys take their pit stops here.
Yeah, multiple drivers, including Stefan Overgaard, Joshua Leutz, Hein Ho Tao, and Antti Tuneman taking pit stops, but those are some of the drivers that were involved in the incident. But the pit window definitely opening now as 34 minutes into the race, and the MX-5s, I'm not sure about the GS class, but the ST class, they can run about 50 minutes on fuel, so I think this will be the opportunity for some of these drivers to start their pit stop.
All right, well, since we're on caution and some pit stops are going to take place, we're going to go to a quick break. Music's going to come up, and we'll let you guys relax to that for a second. So in the meantime, real quick, Arthur Chan is leading the ST class, and Dan Rash is leading the GS class 30 minutes in at the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series race at Watkins Glen. Enjoy the break. Welcome back to Watkins Glen International. We're on lap 12 for the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series 90 Minutes at the Glen. And Eric Smith is currently leading in the GS class. And in the ST class, we have James Stevenson leading. So we've seen 3 cautions now. Do I have that correct, guys? I'm already losing count.
Yes, this is our 3rd caution as the pace car jumps into pit lane.
Sorry, I was watching the replay still on that. I was a bit behind. Eric Smith is leading them back, and we've got Nicholas Bailey behind him. Russell Clayson took a little bit of a look into turn 1, but Arthur Hermont makes good and is able to get by German Fanador. That's for 4th place.
While our very own GSRC Richard Losberg takes the lead from James Stevenson in turn 1.
Stevenson got a bit of damage from contact from a GS car during that pace lap, so I wonder if that made him vulnerable. He's actually got a number of cars clogging up behind him, including Carl Williamson, who is currently holding 6th, I'm sorry. In fact, we've got a pack of GS cars coming in. They're going 3 wide currently. They're coming up to the bus stop. What's going to happen here? Who's going to give way? James Stevenson's going side by side with someone. That's actually Dan Rash, I believe. So Dan is getting very close to the bumper of James Stevenson. He's going to be able to get to the inside as they come around the carousel, but that was very hairy.
Yeah, Dan Rash, Steve Browne, and J.D. Baumgartner all stopped during the pace car laps and got their full fuel and tires done up. Steve Browne jumped through, and now we see Steve Browne's making a little better use through the traffic than Dan Rash is right now, as they're going to try and catch up to the back of the GS field that's right in front of them.
Well, this is working beautifully for Richard Losberg, who's actually managing to pull away from Stevenson. I don't think we ever expected to say that one on one of our broadcasts, but awesome job for Richard. He is a member of our GSRC team, so we are absolutely cheering him on. In the meantime, Eric Biggs is, looks like, yeah, Eric Biggs is hounding James Stevenson for 2nd.
And the front of the GS field, they are starting to battle a little bit. Nicholas Bailey and Eric Smith are pretty close to each other. Nicholas Bailey tried to make a move through heel and through turn 9 coming out of the whole boot section, but wasn't able to do much. So these guys are definitely going to need to hook up and get going as fast as they can with some green laps to try and get some separation between themselves and the GS cars who have stopped.
Yeah, and you know, even though we don't like all the caution periods, I have to admit it is really shaking things up here. There's a lot of guys that we don't normally expect to see in certain positions, and in the meantime, actually, Eric Smith is starting to catch up to Arthur Chan, who just exited the pits. Not sure what that was about, if he had some damage or if his strategy is way off. They're going to probably clear him pretty safely down the back straightaway, but he's got a number of other GS cars coming up behind. This is probably going to come into play.
Yeah, we're being told by our pit reporter that Arthur Chan lost connection for a little bit, so heads up on the smart reporting there for us.
And Arthur Hermont had a very close moment with Russell Clayson there. That's for 4th and 3rd. Arthur's doing a pretty good job, I have to say. We see him sort of up this high, but not typically, so he's having a good race, but he's actually under threat. German Fanador is looking on the inside as they enter the boot, and German's going to make good with a clean pass on the inside.
That was a textbook maneuver right there by German Fanador. That was just well done.
And Arthur looked like he was trying to shut the door after the horses have already left, and he's already looking back on the inside as they come up the hill, but his momentum was not enough, and it was just wrong time, wrong place. He's going to have to back off, and that's going to make him vulnerable as Jason Breifogel starts to close up on him. They're coming up on the lap traffic of Arthur Chan, so that's going to get in the way of both of these guys as Arthur has to take the inside of Arthur, and Jason Breifogel continues the maneuver. So they're coming up to the exit on turn 9 as they get out of the boot, and everyone seems to be getting cleanly around Arthur Chan.
Meanwhile, Carl Williamson in ST classes managed to get around Richard Losberg in 2nd place. James Stevenson is now leading, and Richard Losberg is side by side with Eric Biggs for the 3rd position. Actually, they made contact and both hit the wall. Almost collected, and very close to, and they collected Matthew Reinhold as well as he shoots by them.
Yellow is out.
Number 4 for the day. We're going to watch that replay real quick and see what happened there. Once again, Richard had the inside, and what did I say? You're going to see some guys have some problems there. He just drifted a little bit wide since they were side by side, and he collected Eric Biggs, unfortunately. I'll be honest, I even though I know I'm partial, I have to say I think that was simply a racing incident as I watched that one more time. And we're hearing reports that there was another car that ran into Richard Losber, which you saw on your screen moments ago. Didn't quite catch who that is.
It was Matthew Reinhold.
It sounds like it was Matthew Reinhold from what Ayrton is saying. So, disappointing. Once again, we were just starting to get some action, guys, and it just all fell apart once again.
It did, but maybe this plays into the strategy for the rest of our GS field who have not stopped. They can now safely do that under yellow. They probably will lose a little bit of track position as opposed to if they'd stopped before. But some of these cars, at least Eric Smith, got the extra points for leading a lap.
Yes, and every single point comes into play in the championship, so you got to scrounge for what you can. Good on Eric for finally getting a handle on this series. He's a rookie, and he has self-admitted that he's not very good at endurance and consistency, but I think he's starting to get a handle on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna. His complaint about consistency, I think, is a little tongue-in-cheek. I spent many a lap chasing him down to the best of my ability, and he has been pretty good about knocking off laps to the same tenth of a second in that big Mustang. So I would say he's normally a pretty consistent driver. He just doesn't really have the experience in the 90-minute races, being used to races of about 30 minutes long.
Yeah, the Mustang series that he comes from is definitely more along the lines of sprint races, so this has been a new experience. But as an experienced driver and a well-informed and skilled driver, I think he's showing that you should be adaptable, and he's definitely becoming that. So as we're waiting for people to come around and take hopefully some more pit stops, let's run through the top 5 in each class real quick. Kevin, what's the top 5 in GS looking like?
Well, last time by it was Eric Smith, but it looks like, no, he's going to stay out. Nicholas Bailey, Russell Clayson, German Afanador, Arthur Hermont, and at least Chris Burt have all decided to stop. So it looks like Eric Smith's going to retain our lead, and I think Steve Browne will be second, and I think Dan Rash will be third. We'll have to double check, though, next time by.
Yeah, sorry, I pulled us out on that at the exact wrong time, so that's my fault. Let's let those things slot by before we try and give you some information, because it gets really crazy up here in the booth trying to sort out who is where when pit stops happen. So Steve Browne has obviously worked his way back into second, as you mentioned, and right behind them, once again, is Arthur Chan in the opposite class, in the ST class. So he's sandwiched by a number. In fact, there's no ST cars around him for quite a while. So he's going to have to go through this all over again.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ayrton, please.
Yeah, Carl Williamson and James Stevenson, the two ST leaders, went into pits, and Carl managed to jump Stevenson in the pit stop. So we still have a few drivers out there that have not pitted. Stefan Moran, Chris Moran, both turned to motorsport drivers. Chris pitted fairly early on, but I don't think that was enough to make it to the end.
Yeah, and we do see Arthur Chan was allowed to run around the field, and so he's going to be able to rejoin at the back of the field, not have to worry about the class-leading GS cars in front of him, or next to him, I should say.
That's correct. We just heard the marshal actually mentioning the wave buys. For those not familiar with the CESCS, wave buys work in that if you are a lap down under caution, as long as it's not too late in the race and we're running out of time, the marshals will do wave buys, give you a lap back. It's sort of a lucky dog kind of thing. And that just keeps the racing close, gives some guys some opportunities that might have gotten shuffled through for whatever reason, accidents or just their strategy was off. and be able to get back. Now that goes for both classes, but it's only within your class, I believe. So if you are a lap down in ST from the ST leader, you get a lap back. If you're a lap down from the GS leader and the ST, you do not get a lap back. So that's how that works. And same thing applies just on the GS end. But it's been a point of contention. There's still continuing talks about whether or not they want to tweak that rule. We'll have to see as the season goes on if the league organizer West decides that he wants to change things. But whatever your feelings on it, it definitely keeps things nice and close.
It does do that, and it looks like it will help out some of our GS guys now, as Dan Rash has one fewer car between him and Steve Browne and Eric Smith in front of him. We should point out that the Band-Aid Mustang in front of Dan Rash is the car of Fred Masters, who is a lap down right now.
Yes, and let's just real quickly, since now for sure we are sorted out as we come across the line, let's go over the field, and give you a sense of who is where. In GS class, we are currently seeing Eric Smith scored in first, Steve Browne is in second, Fred Masters is in third, and Dan Rash is in fourth. Then in fifth, we have Jonathan Auger.
And sixth place is Chris Duffy. So I was wrong about Fred Masters. I apologize. I thought he had been picked up by the field. So I'm a little confused as to how he's managed to stay on the lead lap right now. But well done on him.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth noting that Chris Duffy is usually one of the lower regions driver as far as speed goes. So for him to be in sixth place is quite a nice little feather in his cap. He's doing good to stay out of trouble, or at least maybe if it's through strategy or something, he's worked his way up. We'll see how that works out for him. On the ST side, Ayrton, what's the top of the field look like?
Well, we have 4 drivers who have yet to make their pit stop. Stefan Morian leading now, Chris Moran in second, Elliot Huffman in third, and Patrick Gallagher in fourth. Carl Williamson is in fifth, but right behind a huge train of 7 GS drivers who made their pit stops this caution.
Well, I'm looking at our timing and scoring, and I see that we're about 46 minutes in. So we are actually already halfway through this race, guys. We've only put 17 laps in.
Well, the only good news is that as cars fall out with attrition, there's less guys to have incidents with each other. So maybe we'll see some more green action here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we haven't seen anything more than about 5 laps under green or something like that. It's been very slow going for these guys. Really hope you guys can give us a little bit better of a show for a longer stint. It is the endurance series after all. So let's get it together, guys. Let's give the audience something to watch for. I do believe, my eyes deceive me? Are the lights out on the pace car?
They are indeed out, so we should be going green this time back.
Alrighty, so once again, Eric Smith is leading them around as the front of the field. They're coming up to the heel of the boot right now, so they're very close to being done with this pace lap. Hopefully our last pace lap of the race, knocking on wood and everything possible to not break the commentator's curse here. So, running out of things to discuss here in the booth on these guys, because they're giving us quite a bit of a lull, guys.
Well, we do want to send out some appreciation to a couple of our GS drivers. Trace McRae, we know, was in a wreck in the real world not too long ago and is healing up, so we hope to see him back soon. Get better, Trace.
Absolutely. And Trace, if you ever want to come into the booth and give us some help, give us some driver insight, you are most welcome here. So get well soon, and we'd love to see you. Well, the pace car is coming around on the final corner. He's getting ready to duck in. He does so right now. And there goes the green flag. So Eric Smith leads them away with Steve Browne close behind. Steve Browne already takes a look on the inside. Can they keep it clean? We've also got Dan Rash, who's looking to get up as quickly as he can. He's going to take an attempt at third. They all break, but they're starting to bottleneck up. Steve Browne does have the inside. This is going to slow them down on the exit. This is going to give Dan Rash an opportunity. They're side by side coming into the S's. Who is going to give? Eric Smith is on the outside of the first corner. He's going to lose out. Is Steve going to cut him off? No, he does not. They continue to go side by side. Steve gets very close to that wall. Dan Rash, in the meantime, is playing patient. He's playing it safe and just holding back as they continue to go side by side down the front straightaway. This is for the lead in GS class. Steve Browne has the inside. He outbreaks Eric, so Eric slots in for second place. Dan Rash closes up on Eric through the inner loop, but he doesn't make an attempt.
And we do have a GS car off track in the inner loop. That was Chris Duffy, and he comes back just next to a whole pack of cars, but everybody manages to stay clean. That was a little bit questionable timing on the rejoining there from Chris Duffy, unfortunately.
I also saw Fred Masters go wide, but managed to keep it together. There's a lot of action going on up there, but what's it look like in the ST class, Ayrton?
Stefan Moran still leading with Chris Moran attacking fearlessly as a huge pack of GS cars went by before the chicane. So these guys close in speed. They have Patrick Gallagher behind them, but then a lot of GS cars separating the group.
Patrick Gallagher is currently actually up into fourth from what I'm seeing. He is a real-world Playboy Cup driver, so he's proven his worth, and his experience is not for naught. But behind him is Carl Williamson, our eternal, drive from the back driver. He is our Watson, so to speak. So he's made his way up to fifth, and I think this is going to be a good opportunity for Stefan Moran, who is actually, we've got a lot going on between him and Chris Moran. In fact, Chris Moran has gone around the outside, so Chris Moran has ducked into the lead in ST class. Stefan Moran moves down. Elliot Huffman is also looking to do something. He is right behind Moran, behind Moraine. And so it's, as Richard would say, it is all going on, guys.
Yeah, there's action all over the place. I saw quickly Jason Breifogel tag the wall leading onto the main straight. Eric Smith and Dan Rash are very close to each other on the back straight coming up the hill. Let's see if Dan Rash wants to make a move on Eric Smith into the inner loop this time by.
Yes, those guys are 1, 2, 3 all for first, second, and third position. Dan does not make a move, but he is looking like he's carrying much more momentum through that inner loop than Eric Smith. He checks up just a little bit, and he falls back as they come through the carousel. Is he going to try and get a run here? No, it doesn't look like he quite has it. So they're all continuing to hold position at the top of the GS class as they enter the boot, Kevin.
Yeah, this is an interesting challenge for Dan Rash right now, since Eric Smith is the only one of these three cars to have not stopped. Dan Rash definitely wants to get in front of Eric Smith because he's essentially being held up right now, even though Eric Smith is just as fast on the track as Dan Rash is. But if Steve Browne can kind of put things together and try and get away from these guys, he could really give himself a chance for a win here over Dan Rash.
Absolutely, but unfortunately it looks like he doesn't quite have the pace to get by them. He's going to hope that they're starting to duke it out.
And our sixth place car, Nicholas Bailey, was into the wall. He's crabbing, and I think that's the end of his race now.
Oh yeah, he's getting caught by the leaders, but he's going to make it into the pits in time, so that's not going to interrupt them too much. And oh my goodness, I'm looking back at Steve Browne, and he's pulled out a hell of a lead over these two guys.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what happened there, as I was busy looking at the replay of Nicholas Bailey, who got too deep into the inner loop and went into the wall. It looks like Eric Smith got too deep coming out of turn 9, and he bounced off the wall, and that caught Dan Rash by surprise. So that's how they've lost the gap to Steve Browne.
And Dan Rash makes short work of Eric Smith coming through turn 1 there. He is exiting off into the distance now as they go through the S's. So he's got some work ahead of him to try and chase down Steve Browne, who, though he is no slouch, doesn't usually have the pace of Dan Rash. So I'm expecting to see a battle start to happen in maybe a lap or two's time.
In ST class, Patrick Gallagher is now taking the lead from Chris Moran, and a huge battle for the top 5 between Carl Williamson, James Stevenson. Stefan Morian has just been going down the ladder, and right behind him is Elliot Huffman and Tim Brokaw, who's having a fantastic race up there.
Well, here comes Carl Williamson up the inside as they go 3 wide, heading into the inner loop. This is not going to end well. Who's going to give way? Carl Williamson manages to pass 2 cars on one straightaway as he outbreaks both the first and second place car of Patrick Gallagher and Chris Moran. Oh my God, it never ceases to amaze me what Carl Williamson is able to achieve in this car. He is incredibly brave, and it's obviously paying off. He's gone from the back of the field on lap 2 all the way into the lead on lap 20. In the meantime, someone went off. I believe that was Patrick Gallagher.
And now it's just a freight train now, just from first down to 10th. It's just a tale of cars. James Stevenson and Stefan Morian side by side. Elliot Huffman right behind. And I think Morian's going to slot back in behind, but now Carl's back in the lead of this race. So is he going to be able to run away with this one?
Not if James Stevenson has anything to say about it. In fact, he had to go a little bit defensive coming into the heel there, and he is currently in 4th, so he can still run him down, but he's got a little bit of damage on the back of his car. That might be hurting him. Usually, Stevenson is one of the few guys that can hang with Carl Williamson, so I'm willing to bet that he is one to dispense with Chris Moran and Patrick Gallagher as soon as he can get back up on the back of Carl Williamson and take advantage of that draft. Oh, and I think, did James Stevenson just brush the wall?
Yep, I believe so, and that's a corner that we'll see a lot of people doing that because drivers are very greedy to get a good exit as Stefan Morian looking on the inside of James Stevenson once again. He goes very wide on the exit of turn 1, manages to keep the position, but he's just got a ton of guys ready to attack at any moment with the draft.
Now that gives Elliot Huffman a chance to look on the inside of Morian, and he gets by him as they come through. The S's are going to be on the outside of this part, so this is going to slow him down a little bit, but he could have a pick here depending on which way James Stevenson go. No, he does not. Now Morian has a pick depending on how brave he is. Huffman comes right up on the bumper of Stevenson, and he still has to give up the spot for Morian. That is brave stuff from Morian to be able to thread that needle between those 2 cars. But he's still under threat. Huffman is still wanting to get that spot as they come around the carousel. He's only a car length behind.
And at the front of the GS field, Steve Browne had a 1.4 second lead over Dan Rash last time by, and that's important because 1.5 seconds is right about the edge of the draft for the GS Mustangs. So we know that both Steve Browne and Dan Rash are probably straining every sinew right now. Steve Browne trying to get away from Dan Rash in the draft, and Dan Rash trying to close up and get that draft. And coming out of the boot, I got to say, I think Dan Rash might just be back into the draft. So this is coming up roses right now for Dan.
Absolutely. Eric Smith is briefly behind them, maybe about, actually it's looking about the same distance away from Dan, just a hair more than Dan is from Steve. So he could possibly hold on, but he's starting to lose touch, so it's going to be crucial. Behind them, though, Jonathan Auger doing a really good race. We don't talk a whole lot about Jonathan, but he's currently scored in 4th. And he's holding off J.D. Baumgartner in 5th with Russell Clayson behind them. And as we've said, Russell can be quite aggressive, and J.D. is incredibly fast. So Jonathan is going to have his hands full, if I may say so, trying to hold these guys back for the following 33 minutes.
Yeah, we should point out this is only Jonathan's 3rd race in the Continental Dirt Sports Car Series, so he's still a little new to these guys. But he's having a great run so far, looking to leapfrog Eric Smith as we see J.D. Baumgartner making an attempt at Jonathan Auger, and it's not going to happen as he tucks back in line.
Russell Clayson was taking a look as well. I'm not sure. He was just following the draft. Coming by Richard Losmer, whose lap traffic he duly gets out of the way and lets this battle continue on. They are 1, 2, 3 together. This is for 4th, 5th, and 6th. And Jonathan actually feels the need to go defensive coming into the boot. That's going to compromise him as his car pushes on the exit there, but he still manages to hold JD back as they come down. He continues to go defensive. Is he going to come back to the line? Yes, he does. JD is very close to the bumper of that green Mustang of Jonathan Auger. Coming around the toe, he loses a little bit of contact. Is he going to be able to make something of this exit? I don't don't think he does, but Russell Clayson is closing up just a little bit by bit. I'm sure he's going to want to slip into the top 5.
Yeah, JD definitely looks like I think he's got a better car right now. His balance looks nice and strong. And Jonathan seems to be kind of shaky a little bit right now. He's kind of pinching his turn-in points and his apexes, and that's just going to cost him time. So if he wants to keep this top 5 and maybe get that top 3, that final podium spot, he needs to clean up his line a little bit, because I think he might be able to have the speed to stay in front of JD Baumgartner if he gets on his line.
Yeah, going defensive only works so well at certain times. So I agree. And currently, actually, it looks like he's pulling away. So I don't know what happened there. JD is starting to fall into the clutches of Russell. Is Russell going to take a look into turn 1, or is he going to play patient? He doesn't take a look currently. They go under braking for that 90-degree right-hander. The red and gray machine of Russell stays in line, but now he's going to have the draft as they come up the hill. Is he going to get right up on the bumper, or is he going to wait once again? Yeah, he's kind of staying back. These guys are starting to lose touch with him, but I think you're right. You made the exact right call. Jonathan is beginning to pull away. He's got the speed here.
Steve Browne and Dan Rash are side by side approaching the inner loop. Dan Rash is on the outside, but he's going to give it up as Steve Browne crashes over the first of the curves. Dan Rash has reeled in Steve Browne very quickly, and I think it's just a matter of time, before he's able to make a move in front of Steve Browne.
It could be a matter of time, but Steve is going to fight with all his might to try and hold on to that win, because he hasn't had one in a while. And they're coming around through turn 6 currently into the boot, coming down the chute into the toe. And, I'm willing to bet that Steve is going to do all he can. He's got a third of the race to do it, but, I mean, he's a champion. So it's not like he doesn't know how to race this car and know how to defend a lead position. I'm willing to bet you he's going to throw everything in the book at Dan to try and hold him back.
Yeah, I'm absolutely in agreement with you. And, with the amount of cautions we've seen so far in this race, the track position right here, just being in front of another car and hoping another yellow comes out could ice it for you, because we may very well see a late yellow still to go in this race.
Absolutely. We've seen late yellows come into play. In fact, we've seen these races finish under caution. So it's not unusual. And as that battle is raging on up front, let's actually hop over to the ST side real quickly and see what things are looking like over there. Ayrton, what's the hot battle on the ST class?
Well, meanwhile, Carl Williamson has been able to pull almost a 4-second gap to Chris Moran in second, but behind him he has a train of drivers, including Patrick Gallagher, James Stevenson, and Stefan Morian. Elliott Huffman a little farther back, but these guys have been mixing it up back and forth, and the draft has created some exciting racing as Patrick Gallagher looking on the inside of Chris Moran, not making it happen. But these guys were two wide, 2 rows deep going into the bus stop last lap round.
I'm sorry, let's hop back to GS class real quick, because we got a battle for the lead once again. Dan Rash is looking on the outside. It's exactly like it was the last lap by. Is Dan going to be able to make it happen this time? No, he backs out and slots back in line, but he is cutting it very, very close. He is not letting go of any inch on Steve Browne. Interesting how hard he's pushing him. I think he knows the clock is ticking away, and like you said with those yellows, I'm willing to bet that he's thinking he's not going to have every opportunity in the universe to try and make something happen here.
No, absolutely. And I did see that the pressure's probably getting to Steve Browne a little bit, as he was very deep into turn 1 last time by, and that's what allowed Dan Rash to have a good shot. But Dan Rash, did he get into the back of Steve Browne there? Into the toe? They're very close indeed.
And I've seen Dan do this before. In fact, he does it with Brian Strodbeck all the time. He gets right on top of that back bumper. He is not afraid to race close, as he is now. Is he going to take a look as they come to the heel? No, he backs out. In the meantime, this has actually allowed Eric Smith to start to close up on these guys. This is exactly what he wants, because this is going to give Eric the opportunity to maybe get into this mess as well. And I don't think he'll want to try and make something of it right now, but if it gets down to the end of the race and they're still dueling, I'm willing to bet you that Eric's going to take a possible try at the lead.
Very true, but Eric Smith still has to make his pit stop. He's not going to be able to make it on fuel alone. He will have to stop.
Oh my goodness, I hadn't even considered that until you pointed it out. So we'll have to keep half an eye on him. Our spotter will have to keep us informed to see when he goes in. He's had the blessing of 4 cautions, though, which I don't think is enough to get him through to the end. But he's already past the normal pit window, so he could get a good opportunity here, considering he only has to do a splash and dash with how much fuel he's saved. But yeah, wow, that's unfortunate. And meanwhile, behind him, I would like to point out that Russell Clayson has managed to get past both Jonathan Auger and JD Baumgartner, but his car is significantly compromised on aero, which was from earlier in the race. So I don't know that he'll be able to run away from them quite cleanly as he wanted to.
And Dan Rash moves to the inside as they approach the inner loop on Steve Browne, and they are side by side through the inner loop. Somebody has to give up here. Who's that going to be? It looks like it's going to be Dan Rash as they go in through the carousel. Side by side action. That was very close.
And Dan's got to be very careful of trying that because he could get a slowdown penalty, which is really going to wreck his race, even more than if he made contact, I think. But yeah, wow, gutsy stuff. He's still looking on the outside as Browne goes defensive into the chute. And this is going to give him probably a little bit of a bad exit, but not enough to give Dan the opportunity. He stays in line as they head through the toe. They're coming up onto lap traffic. Who is this? This is Hang Ho Tao ahead of him. Oh, and Dan Rash does make contact. They get a little bit sideways, but this is going to give Eric Smith the opportunity. Eric Smith goes by 1 car. Is he going to get by the lead car of Steve Browne? Yes, he is. He is clean by, and he's going to be able to outbrake him. This is going to give Eric Smith the lead on lap 25, Kevin.
And that was due to Steve Browne getting just a little bit loose in the toe there, and Dan Rash was so close he had nothing to do but to get into the bumper of Steve Browne. So fortunately, all 3 of these guys were able to make it through the corner and still continue the race. But Eric Smith's looking pretty good right now.
And he's going to have the help of Hang Ho Tao, who is going to hold up these cars just a little bit. It's going to get a little hairy as they exit turn 10, but they both get by cleanly. And that is not what they wanted, but that's exactly what Eric Smith wanted, who was able to get by just through that fast left-hander. And that slowed up both Steve Browne and especially Dan Rash, who's dropped off significantly. But Eric Smith is sitting pretty, but they've still got 24 minutes to go, so he's going to have to defend quite a while. He didn't quite have the pace before, so he's going to have his hands full.
And I'm not entirely sure how Eric Smith's going to work a pit stop into his strategy and still come back out to battle these guys. So it may be that our battle is only between Steve Browne and Dan Rash, and maybe that's how Dan Rash is approaching it right now.
It could be, and Steve Browne is already looking on the outside. I don't think Eric Smith is going to give it up easily because he still wants to try and do what he can to slow these guys down, although he is outbraked and Dan Rash slots in behind him, so Eric Smith gets moved down into second. And I think you called it right that he's not going to be able to hold them off for very long, and Dan is probably going to pick his passing point carefully with these guys.
And in fact, it looks like it's going to be right here in chute. Dan Rash goes to the inside, and I think Eric Smith's going to give it up and allow him to scoot through. Yes, he does. So we now have Dan Rash back in second place as he's going to continue to hunt down Steve Browne.
Well, it was a brief but shining moment for Eric Smith. It was some good opportunistic driving, but as you said, he's still going to make that pit stop somewhere in here. I'm not sure how he's going to do it. If he's actually trying to make this whole thing on one tank, I'm pretty amazed. And if he manages to pull off a coup such as that, kudos to him. As this battle continues, though, these cars have settled down just a little bit, so let's hop back to ST class, see what's going on over there. It looks like we still got a battle going on for second place, Ayrton.
Yeah, these guys have been switching back and forth every single lap, and the order just getting mixed up every time. James Stevenson was at a front last lap, but just got freight trained by Patrick Gallagher and Chris Moran, and he just hasn't been able to run away and work on catching Carl. Carl has now gained almost a 9.5 second lead ahead of these guys and running pretty much consistently a second and a half faster every lap with these guys battling too wide. So this is working really well in the hands of Carl Williamson.
Yeah, he's got to just keep it clean at this point because I think he'll have the win in the bag, barring any cautions knocking on that wood. Chris Moran is currently under threat from Patrick Gallagher, who is actually more under threat from James Stevenson, who backs out as they head towards the heel. And Gallagher actually slots in line ahead of him. That was a little brave there. But he gets backed up by Moran, who is going to be under threat from James Stevenson once again as they come to turn 9. Stevenson goes wide, though, and that was a very bad entry for him. Elliot Huffman is going to take a look on the back of Stevenson. So I think you're right. There's just a lot of chaos going amongst these guys. It's really hard to call. Nobody's staying in one position for too long.
We should mention that Arthur Chan, who actually got disconnected earlier and was a lap down, has now worked himself back up to 8th place, actually. He's hounded down Tim Brokaw right in front of him, Joshua Leutz, not far behind, and in a few laps' time, he might be right behind that train for 2nd place.
And I bet you that Chan is probably banking on a caution at this moment as he makes another pass, what looks like pretty cleanly into turn 1. Yes, he just slots on by. So Arthur Chan moves up into 7th. This is he's maybe been taking a few notes from Carl Williamson and making pretty good of this recovery run. We've got about 21 minutes left to go, so we're definitely getting down into the end of the race here. Meanwhile, back up towards the top guys of ST class, it looks like we've got side-by-side racing once again between Elliot Huffman and James Stevenson going through the inner loop. They continue to stay side-by-side, but very clean racing between both of them. James Stevenson is the loser, though, as he is on the outside. Oh, but he was... did he make contact with Patrick Gallagher there? I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, both those drivers got a little loose with a little bit of contact. I think both of them managed to drive through that safely and unharmed.
And we did see our 3rd place car of Eric Smith as Dan Rash got into the back of Steve Browne into turn 1. This battle is going on very well. Eric Smith did go into and serve his pit stop, so he is now out of the battle for the lead. But Steve Browne and Dan Rash are very much in the battle for the lead right now, and they're getting more and more aggressive with each other each lap.
Yeah, currently Dan is following the leader of Steve Browne. And last time online, they were only 2/10 apart. Oh, and Dan...
What is it?
Dan dipped into the grass and then suddenly veered into the side of the wall of the straightaway. I've never seen that before. I wonder if he had some more computer problems.
Well, he's rolling again, so his computer must be running right now. I don't know what to think of that.
That was one of the most bizarre maneuvers I've ever seen in this series. We'll have to get Dan in here a little bit later, but that's going to slot him down a number of positions. He is actually currently going to be 7th, if I'm not mistaken, because of that loss. So this is a bit like Daytona all over for him. One mistake has ruined his opportunity at a win.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's going to be able to continue. His car is very damaged, and I think he's crabbing a little bit in the corners.
Well, yeah, we're hearing him tell David Whamman, the ST driver, that he is damaged. Up front, this has given Steve Browne about a 6-second lead over Russell Clayson, who has inherited 2nd place. And Jonathan Auger, who we were talking about earlier, has moved his way up into... Oh, I'm sorry, he has not moved his way up into the podium. J.D. Baumgartner has slipped his way by. Jonathan Auger is going to want that back so that he can get a podium finish in only his 3rd race in the CESCS.
Well, that was quick action. That's why you got to stay on your toes at this track. And looking back at the replay, Dan Rash, it looks like he just got his outside tires into the grass on the main straight and got loose and couldn't recover. That's about as bizarre as an accident as I think I've ever seen.
That could be some prime grade A brain fade, possibly. But I don't want to make any judgments until we talk to him and find out for sure. I wouldn't want to slight such a great driver. But yeah, I watched it happen, and I have to agree with you. That's what I saw happen. I just don't know if that's the exact case. There could be some outside influence there. Well, since that sort of neutered the battle for the lead on the GS side, let's pop in with the ST guys. I know Corey Williamson continues to lead way far ahead, but what's 2nd place looking like since that's been the hot battle, Ayrton?
Chris Moran just passed Elliot Huffman for 2nd. Patrick Gallagher has somehow fallen back from the group. I was looking back on the laps, and it didn't seem like he made a mistake, just lost the draft, and there he went back, and Arthur Chan now fighting with him for 5th place.
Yeah, these guys have been fighting for quite a while, and this is the sort of battle that I think we had expected since the beginning, which is the draft battle. No one can seem to get away from one another, and it's just going to keep them fighting. I think at this point, it might be a little too late, but if I were there, maybe about 5 minutes ago, I would have said, hey guys, let's stop fighting so much. Let's try and slide in line, use the draft with one another, and start to catch up to Carl Williamson, who is leading by, gosh, is that right that he's got 14 seconds on these guys?
I'm not surprised. He's running about consistent 2:13s, while these guys are running 2:15s, 2:16s, just from battling side by side, and it's really not helping.
Yeah, definitely not. And Carl, kudos to him, because he's gone from first to last to back to first during this race, which he's that's not an easy feat to do. In the meantime, James Stevenson is still duking it out with Chris Moran holding him back through the inner loop, and they're coming through the carousel right now. Elliot Huffman's been doing pretty good. We saw him on the podium back at Mosport, and it looks like he could have another podium finish if he manages to get away from these guys or just time things right towards the end of the race. We've only got 16 minutes left to go, so we're getting down to the very end of things.
And some of these drivers still are very close on fuel. Elliot Huffman, Chris Moran made very early pit stops with Carl Williamson. Carl Williamson did a second stop with James Stevenson, but Chris and Elliot have not done their second stop, so I'm curious to see if they're planning on going the rest of the way on this fuel.
Well, the battle of the GS class seems to continue to be J.D. Baumgartner and Jonathan Auger. We want to stay on that battle, but I want to make a quick mention. Eric Smith, who we saw fighting up at top, has not made his strategy work for him. He is currently 10th, so he's fallen way down the order. It looks like early pit stops were the order of the day, and he missed that boat. But in the meantime, J.D. Baumgartner continues to hold third place over Jonathan Auger. They're about 3 seconds behind Russell Clayson. They haven't really been able to keep pace with him since they were passed by him. And Kevin, I'm not entirely sure if that's them fighting or if that's just simply raw pace that they're not able to run him down.
Yeah, they just don't seem to have the pace right now. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. There hasn't been a whole lot of action as we now see Jonathan make a move on J.D. Baumgartner, but that's not going to work out right now. It definitely seems that Russell Clayson has got a bit more speed than J.D. Baumgartner or Jonathan Auger at this point.
And we have to apologize if our pictures have not been matching what we've been talking about. We might be having some possible technical problems with our director. We'll keep you abreast if anything goes awry. In the meantime, we hope to keep you on until the finish here. I noticed that J.D. Baumgartner was getting just a little bit sideways, a little loose coming
Big
into
crash
the heel.
for second place in ST class. Chris Moran gets loose going into the chicane, hits the wall, and hits Elliot Huffman, and James Stevenson manages to get away with it.
Oof, it's all going down in ST class. That was a fierce battle, and I suppose something had to happen eventually, and it looks like Chris Moran has actually exited out into the pits, so he must have had severe enough damage that he couldn't make it back. James Stevenson inheriting second. Elliot Huffman is in third. And look at this. Arthur Chan has managed to catch them and is currently in fourth.
Yeah, actually, Elliot Huffman did not make contact with Chris, but he was very close and had to cut the chicane in order not to hit him, so he's very lucky to get away with that one.
Well, it seems our picture is continuing to be stuck on this GS battle, so at least you have something interesting to look at. Unfortunately, you are unable to see anything else that we may catch, so we apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen. We will try to get those straightened out, and in the meantime, as you watch, it looks like JD's having a bit of his hands full as Jonathan Auger takes a look on the inside. That black and fire-colored machine is really pressuring the 49 Motorsports machine of J.D. Baumgartner. I think that with only 12 minutes to go, things are going to start ticking down, and Jonathan's going to start making more and more desperate moves to try and get back onto that podium.
Yeah, you got to think that he wants to get a podium, and only his third race in the series, whereas J.D. Baumgartner, I think he just wants to maintain every spot he can get, because he's looking to move into the overall lead in the championship standings right now, with Brian Strodbeck missing this race and Dan Rash having crashed himself out, I guess. J.D. Baumgartner is going to be the big points winner. So he definitely doesn't want to give that spot up to Jonathan. But Jonathan seems to have dropped back a little bit, so maybe that's going to be a moot point.
Yeah, and slow and steady wins the race, both the race itself and in points. So JD's going to benefit quite a bit from managing to stay out of trouble in what has been a chaotic and trouble-filled race. So he's been playing a good game there. But who's been playing an even better game, I'd have to say, is Steve Browne, who's currently lapping some more ST cars. And he's got at least a 6-second lead over Russell Clayson with less than 12 minutes left to go. He's all by his lonesome, and he's got this thing wrapped up. He can just keep it on, keep it on the black stuff and keep it pointed forward.
Yeah, this is a great result right now for Steve Browne. I'm really happy for him. It seems like it's been a long time since he's had a win, even though it was the last race of last season. But even still, when you're the defending champion, you kind of expect to be on the top step of that podium every round. And I'm certain he's glad to finally be back there.
Yes, this will give a shot in the arm to his championship hopes. I don't think it's too late quite yet, but he's going to have to make one hell of a run on the points and continue to make wins like this if he hopes to try and defend his championship. And he might yet still. He's not champion for no reason, so we could see him back into this fight. In the meantime, I did notice that on the screen you saw, actually Dan Rash went off. We saw Dan Rash go off on our screen. He got loose into the toe of the boot there.
Yeah, he's just kind of making time right now. His car's heavily damaged, and he's been on the radio telling drivers that he's damaged and having a difficult time to go in to complete the lap. So maybe he should be off the track right now. I'm not entirely sure. That's not a call I think I can make sitting out here, but Dan's definitely in a tough spot right now.
Yeah, I think the fact that he's already gone a lap down, to me it said he should have gone in and get at least a little bit of that damage repaired. So at least that would be my call. But again, Dan Rash is much faster and won way more races than I have, so I'm kind of with you. What do I know when I'm not in that car and know exactly what he's dealing with? So poor Dan has not had the race that he hoped for. He certainly could have won a few more this season, but as we've seen, it's very hard to predict what's going to happen. It's obviously very hard to stay out of trouble because a number of these fast guys who should have had more wins have just been finishing lower and lower in the reaches of the points.
Yeah, and that's an interesting problem. These guys are very, very fast, very experienced in the Mustang, and on the surface should be able to stay clean for an entire race. But I think that the competition level has gotten just so deep in this series now that these drivers have to push really hard, and the inevitable mistakes are now starting to show up.
Well, we haven't talked about the ST side very recently, even though we can't hop over there currently from what I can tell. Ayrton, is the battle for second still raging?
Yeah, actually Fred Masters just spun in front of the battle for second place, and they got his car stuck near the heel of the boot. So that is a caution for this race, and it's going to allow another battle for the lead in both classes.
It's going to be a game changer for Steve Browne. Russell Clayson does have damage, but let's see, we're about 8 minutes to go. I'm willing to bet this is going to be, maybe a 2-lap, maybe even a 1-lap dash.
Yeah, we'll have to see how many laps the marshals let us have here, but I think Russell Clayson is probably going to try and take every advantage chance that he's got here. So we'll have to see what he can do to try and get a chance at the win over Steve Browne.
Man, it's apparently the day of comebacks, because I just looked at the scoring. Not only is Carl Williamson back in the lead after coming back from last place, Arthur Chan has done, I think, essentially the same. I don't think he was completely in last place, but he's now currently second. And with this caution, that's going to bring him right onto the bumper of Carl. Well, unfortunately, I don't believe we can go to break since we're still having a few technical problems. Since we're so close to the end, we're going to hold on to this and keep you guys informed all the way till the end. We've got 7 minutes less to go, less than 7 minutes left to go. So this should be a short pit stop from what we're hearing. And I'm seeing that Carl Williamson is a bit nonplussed by the whole caution flag. I think he wanted to run away from this thing. And we know that Arthur Chan is incredibly fast. He's a race winner, not in this series, but in other private leagues. And he's definitely a top contender. So I'm pretty sure that Arthur is going to be harrying Carl when we get back to green, Ayrton.
Hopefully.
I made a few words. So, in the meantime, it looks like James Stevenson was scored in third, but he's currently behind Elliot Huffman. That's curious. I'm not sure what happened there. But I'm sure they'll get that sorted out. Our newcomer, Patrick Gallagher, and man with real-life experience, is scored in fifth. So his real-life experience with the MX-5 seems to be serving him quite well, Ayrton.
Yeah, and he was battling for the top 5 at Mid-Ohio, too, so he's definitely shown to be a competitive driver in this series.
Absolutely. Well, Kevin, it looks like we're going to be seeing a battle that we didn't expect to see. What's your call on Steve Browne, Russell Clayson, and J.D. Baumgartner, the top 3 now being closed up and together?
Well, I think anything I predict will be wrong, so I'm not going to predict anything, except that we know that Russell Clayson is a demon on the brakes, and I think he may try and take advantage of that.
Yeah, and we've got, let's see, 5 minutes to go, and I think the lights are actually still on. So it's looking like, as I said earlier, about a 1 or 2 lap dash. So probably more close to a 1 lap dash because we're not done with the lap yet here, and we're going to have to do at least one more, which is going to be, I believe, about 3 to 4 minutes long.
Yeah, I think we saw that it was about a 4-minute pace lap earlier, so I think you're about right there.
So we're going to be going white here. And I'm hearing people talking about Arthur Chan. Arthur Chan seems to have disappeared. Ayrton, did you see what happened?
Oh, don't tell me he's lost connection again.
I think he has. He's not appearing on the track. After slotting himself all the way up into second place, Arthur Chan seems to have lost internet connection, which means James Stevenson has moved into second. And actually, let's see. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, Elliot Huffman is currently in second with James Stevenson in third. There's some weird things going on with the timing and scoring. I apologize if I give misinformation. We should be going back to green next time by. Let me try and find the pace car, see where he is.
We are. Lights are off.
Thank you for that, Ayrton. So hopefully this will be the end of it with 1 lap dash to go. Yeah, I see in the information Arthur Chan received throughput fell to unacceptable level, which means that he is gone. For those not familiar with sim racing, your internet connection can go out on you, and that means you cannot rejoin in the position that you were in. You're basically just you had the equivalent of like an electrical failure or a mechanical failure, and you just can't control that. It's kind of random, and poor Arthur, we keep talking about how he's Mr. Unlucky, and he continues to prove us in ways that I don't think that we typically expect.
Meanwhile, Elliot Huffman will now take second place behind Carl Williamson, followed by James Stevenson. So this is going to be a last lap battle for the lead in both classes.
I think that Elliot, he's going to have to hang in the draft. I don't know that he's going to have something for Carl. Carl can be very aggressive and a very strong driver. I'm pretty sure he's going to do everything he can up to car contact, not including car contact, to hold him back. But Elliot might want it. And there seems to be some conversation going on about what happened with Arthur, and it looks like Arthur tried to get back and was booted once again, so not going very good for him. In the meantime, Steve Browne is currently in the toe of the boot behind the pace car, who is taking them back, and we've got a little less than 2 minutes left to go. So yes, it will be a white flag when we get back, I believe. Hopefully, we'll have to keep our eye on that. And it sounds like we've got some of our technical problems nicked. I believe our director is able to direct us around with the camera, so hopefully we should be able to give you an exciting finish here in the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series at Watkins Glen. And real quick, before we go back to green, I just want to make a quick mention that we want to thank our sponsors, Safecraft Racing, for helping make this series possible. Safecraft Racing makes real-life safety gear for motorsports, and do a lot to help keep lives safe, keep people in their cars, and keep their limbs all intact. So thank you to Safecraft for all you do for racing and motorsports in general, and for the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series. If you are a race car driver, definitely consider giving their gear a look and help save some lives, including your own. Well, we're coming around the final corner, and Steve Browne is leading them with the pace car getting ready to duck in. There he goes right now. Green flag should be coming out. And there it goes. We get a little bit backed up. This gives Russell Clayson a run. He can't pass before the checkered flag, or the start-finish line. In fact, he does. That's going to give him a black flag. Steve Browne calls that out over the radio. Who's behind him? J.D. Baumgartner is taking a look on the inside of Steve Browne. In fact, he takes second place. Russell is running away from it. He's going to have to give that position back, or else he is probably going to be disqualified. Steve Browne is continuing to look on the inside of the S's. Oh, he's getting very close to JD, but they give some space. Is he going to be able to get ahead? Kevin, I think he's going to be able to get the spot back as they come back to the back straightaway.
Yeah, well done to these guys. I'm in agreement with you that I think Russell Clayson has to get this spot back. There's no doubt in my mind that he had passed Steve Browne before the start-finish line.
Oh, this is going to be a point of contention, I'm sure. Going to be a lot of discussion after this race unless he gives it back. Steve Browne doesn't seem to be quite pulling them in, but he definitely has his hands full with J.D. Baumgartner. And in fact, German Fanador is behind them, looking to get onto the podium. So it's all going off. What does the ST side look like at the top, Ayrton?
Elliot Huffman was contending with Carl Williamson on the outside to the chicane, but gave it up. Now Carl has a whole lot of traffic ahead of him, and hopefully that will give a chance for Elliot to get back on his bumper and make a pass before the checkered flag.
So we'll have to keep half an eye on that. In the meantime, Russell Clayson is leading them around the end of the lap, and I'm trying to give a listen to the radio to see if I can hear anything going on as far as discussion on whether or not he's going to give that position back. I think that boat has sailed. He's got no opportunity to do so by now. Steve Browne could potentially have the win. We'll have to keep ladies and gentlemen informed on what the call is going to be. In the meantime, right now, he is our potential winner, Russell Clayson. As they come through the penultimate corner, he doesn't have any challenge from Steve Browne. He's not going to be close enough to make anything happen unless there's a mistake in this final corner from Russell Clayson. He's coming around the final corner. He keeps it off the wall, and he leads him away to the start-finish line. Russell Clayson takes the win, with Steve Browne following in second at Watkins Glen, and J.D. Baumgartner completing the podium. What's the ST side look like, Ayrton?
Well, Carl Williamson got held up by traffic in a side-by-side finish. Elliot Huffman right next to him, and it looks like Carl Williamson will get the finish.
Just eked him out at the line. That was incredibly close. Good on Elliot to try and take advantage of that. Unfortunately, it just wasn't quite enough. But man, he has brought himself back up to the front. We talked about him being up there, but kind of disappearing for a while, and I think he's made his mark. Well, as the cars complete the finish here, let's go over the standings real quick on each side. On GS side, Russell Clayson takes the win, although we need to get confirmation on whether or not he will be able to keep that win. Steve Browne comes in second, J.D. Baumgartner comes in third, German Fanador finishes fourth, and Jonathan Auger finishes fifth. Ayrton, what are the top five in the ST class?
Carl Williamson by 3 1/100th of a second edged out Elliott Hoffman for the first place finish. James Stevenson rounds up the podium with Patrick Gallagher in 4th and Joshua Loitz in 5th.
So exciting on all sides, but for different reasons. We're going to go to break real quick here, let you guys get a rest and get a snack. We'll come back with interviews with the top drivers, see if we can get people's opinions on what will be a definite point of contention. In the meantime, enjoy the music. Welcome back. The 90 minutes at the Glen with the Continental Endurance Sports Car Series has just finished, and it was an exciting, if not controversial, race. We have not gotten a ruling on the finishing order other than the official standings in iRacing, and that is Russell Clayson won in GS, Steve Browne was second, and JD Baumgartner. However, Russell Clayson did pass before the start-finish line. So that is a possible disqualification. We will not know until the IRT makes a ruling. But in the meantime, we do want to talk to Steve Browne, the second place finisher, and we're going to pull him into the booth here. Steve, can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you, Joe.
Well, Steve, it was an incredibly eventful race for you. You had a hell of a battle with Dan Rash for quite a bit of time before a bizarre incident with him. And then you were leading until that final lap when what looked like Russell Clayson jumped the line. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, the finish there, I never saw the green coming out of the final corner. I got the white, but I never saw the green, and that stacked up the rest of the field, and I guess for whatever reason they got the green, and they just went. I was lucky to get back past JD there, and Russell was too far ahead at that point. As far as Dan, that was some great racing. I think he might have been going a little easy on me. He's got much better pace than that. I don't know what happened with his incident. You guys might have to fill me in on there. I know he got into the back of me going into one there, but I don't know what happened down the back.
To be honest, we were just as baffled as you. All that we could see was that he put two tires into the grass on the left side on the straightaway, and then suddenly veered into the inside wall, and then obviously his race went downhill from there. So we're just as confused. Kevin, do you have any questions for Steve?
Well, Steve, it's good to see you back up at the front. Now 2 races in a row. Well done. So we'll have to wait to see if that was obviously the win or a second place. But tell us about the pit stop. You got quite the jump over Dan Rash during your pit stop. What did you do differently?
I don't know what happened differently there. I actually came in short at my pit stop, so I even had to pull forward and still beat him by a good 3 seconds or so. But the plan was there is I figured we can go all the way, just come and get tires. If I had to come up through the back of the pack, that'd be good. And, if I beat him out, I figured I'd be able to stay out in front of him coming through the field. Then we had that quick caution. Everybody had to come and pit anyway, which kind of ruined that strategy. But, yeah, I don't know what happened with his pit stop either.
Well, you were definitely having a good battle with him, and I don't think you should sell yourself short because he definitely wasn't able to make any, strong commitments on you. So I think you're running pretty well there. How close were you to wrecking there in turn 2, in the toe when he got into the back of you?
Yeah, the first time was fine. The second time I thought I was gone, but he, backed out of it and let me catch it, which was good. And then Eric obviously flew past us. But I thought I was gone after the second hit, and I don't know how I saved the one in turn 1 either. That one I don't think was his fault. I got on the brakes pretty hard there to make the corner, and he just got into the back of me.
All right, well, congratulations on a great run today.
Hey, thanks guys. Hopefully we get this switched around here.
Yeah. Before you go, is there any sponsors you'd like to thank or shout-outs you'd like to make?
Yeah, thanks to Turn 2 Motorsports and all my teammates, and thanks to Solo Storm and Patrol Data Systems.
Good stuff. Good luck in 2 weeks' time. Hopefully we'll have a little bit less eventful race.
Thanks, guys. See you there.
Well, unfortunately, we're not seeing too much of the GS guys, although I'm hearing that Russell is around. In fact, yes, I see him. So let's have our race winner over and get his side of the story, see if he's willing to talk. Russell, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Russell, it's a bit of a controversial finish, but congratulations on the win. What is your side of the story on that last restart?
Well, I thought that I timed my restart really well. I wasn't going until I got green, 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 and suddenly Steve just wasn't moving. I was easily 2 car lengths ahead of him at the start-finish line. I jumped the restart. There's no 2 ways around it.
All right. Well, do you expect the IRT to overturn the finishing order, or what are you expecting to happen on that?
I would be amazed if they didn't overturn the results. I didn't win the race.
Interesting and humbling words. We saw a fair bit of you throughout this race, and it seemed like it was pretty eventful. Besides just the ending, we saw you got some damage on the front of your car early on. Were you able to deal with traffic pretty effectively, or was that giving you a lot of trouble?
I didn't feel any damage. Netcode finally worked in my favor this time. So I was able to push as hard as I was capable of. My car felt great. I had 12 seconds of optional repair, which I didn't choose to do because the car felt good. Just change the tires, fuel it up, and let me go.
All right. Well, hopefully it won't be a complete disqualification and just a reversal of order, so you can at least keep a podium, because you worked very hard this race. And want to congratulate you on an excellent race. Are there any shout-outs you'd like to make, or sponsors you'd like to thank?
Well, couldn't do it without the backing of my V Apex Racing Group team. They're always behind us 100%. And inside SimRacing, there are proud sponsors, and we wear their colors proudly.
Good stuff. I definitely read their articles here and there, and they always give some entertaining stuff. Again, congratulations, and thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, Joe. Always a pleasure.
All right. Well, real quick, we'll just get one or two questions from a couple guys, even though they weren't on the podium. Or actually, no, we do have one more person from the podium. I see JD is here, so let's pull JD in since he was the rest of our top three. JD, can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you.
JD, it was a hard-fought battle to the end, and it looked like you could have had a peek at second place, but couldn't quite pull it off. You had a good battle with Jonathan Auger. Have you raced with him a lot, or was this your first time duking it out with him?
First time. The last lap, I wasn't really sure what to do. I know that the start had gotten crazy. I wasn't sure if Russell got all the way around him. I had to slam the brakes in order to keep from passing before the start-finish line. So I really don't know what happened there. But yeah, with Jonathan, that was the whole race. Me and him back and forth.
It was there was a lot of cautions in this race. Since most of them happened early on, did you expect to be able to maybe run a little bit less on fuel, or did that affect your fuel strategy at all?
I'm no good at saving front tires or fuel, so I did a two-stop race and still finished with less than a gallon.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of yourself then. Kevin, do you have any questions for JD?
Well, JD, you must be quite pleased. You qualified 10th and finished potentially second, depending on how the things shake out after the race. Just how pleased are you with that? That really helped out your championship, no?
I think I said it before, but better lucky than good. It's just most of the time when people were wrecking, the seas just parted, and I got to get around everything.
Well, congratulations then.
Thank you, guys.
Before we let you go, are there any sponsors you'd like to thank, or shout-outs you'd like to make?
Just 49. It was really nice having Chris there today. Just somebody to be able to bounce information off of. That never been part of a team before, but it really does help just to at least run your ideas across.
Yeah, strength in numbers. Congratulations once more, and thanks for talking to us.
Thanks, guys.
Real quick before we hop over to ST side, I want to pull Dan Rash in here at least and give one question to figure out exactly what went on. Dan, can you hear us?
Loud and clear, Joe.
Dan, it was yet again another exciting race for you. Didn't end, I expect, how you wanted it to. What exactly happened in the battle with Steve? We saw you dip into the grass, and we're not sure what happened from there.
Yeah, the computer gremlin struck again. So this time, My overclock was entirely stable. I had all my power settings set to never turn off, although apparently for the displays, while I had no screensaver enabled, I had it set to turn off the display after 15 minutes of inactivity. Now, I spent hours practicing without an issue. In practice before the race, I ran an entire fuel stint of 9.3 gallons, and I don't recall touching the mouse, and that didn't trigger this scenario, but apparently during the race, it triggered it, and all of my screens turned black while I was going down the straightaway. And then I guess my hand drifted on the steering wheel just a little bit, and I went into the grass, and in the split second when I realized what was going on and I slammed on the brakes to hopefully lock my car up in a straight line, by then I already had 2 tires on the grass, so my car shot to the right and then hit the wall. And then I immediately grabbed the mouse and gave it a good wiggle, and all the screens came back on, but by then the damage was done.
Yeah, absolutely. You've solved a mystery that we were scratching our heads about. We were incredibly baffled as to what had happened, but that was one of my suspicions, that it was another computer thing. Well, the next race in 2 weeks' time is Indianapolis. Are you going to be there?
I should be. I'm actually having a knee surgery in 2 days, so hopefully I'll be fully recovered by then, but we'll wait and see.
We wish you the best of luck on that, and definitely get well soon. Thanks for talking to us.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, let's hop over to the ST side since we spent a while on the GS cars. Our ST third place person was James Stevenson, completing the lowest step of the podium. So let's bring James on in here. James, can you hear us?
Sure can.
James, it was extremely eventful for you. We know that you had a little bit of damage on the rear of the car for most of the race. Was that hurting your top speed? Is that why you were kind of down in the clutches of that second place pack?
That was hurting my top speed a little bit, but not too much. What hurt my top speed even more was when I nudged the wall coming out of the last turn trying to chase down Carl.
We did witness that one on the screen, and that was really unfortunate. It just goes to show you how close the walls are at this track. You did pretty good to manage to keep yourself up in third, though. Did you think you could maybe have more for Carl if you had stayed out of the wall?
For sure. I was able to hang with Carl and was hoping to try and pull the draft move off on the last lap, but it just wasn't to be.
Well, we're trying to get through the podium here, so I'm sorry to have such a short interview, but is there any sponsors you'd like to thank or shout-outs you'd like to make?
I'd like to thank Castrol for sponsoring me, and also give a shout-out to my team members who all seem to have a pretty bad run today. Stefan and Richard were here and both got caught in incidents, and Stephen is not able to make it today, but he'll be back strong.
Yes, here's hoping for that. How do you expect to do in 2 weeks' time at Indianapolis?
Well, that's a bit of a bogey track for me. I've only raced there once and sort of got a bit caught up in some incidents and didn't finish too well, so hopefully I can just improve upon that.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us, and congratulations on the podium.
Thanks, guys.
Well, Ayrton, we've got Elliot Huffman, who had a very good race. Would you like to ask him a question for his second place finish?
Yeah, Elliot, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Congratulations on a second place finish, a well-fought battle. At what point did you think you had the pace to contend for the podium?
Well, Carl was in a league of his own for most of the second half of the race, so I didn't think I'd be anywhere close to him like that. But as for the podium, it quickly became a race of attrition with that 5-car group racing for second. They just kept having issues and falling out of the pack.
So were you using the draft as an strategic advantage, or were you just battling it out like there's no tomorrow?
Absolutely, I was using the draft, and I even was anticipating having a lot of caution so I could try and short pit on gas and be up there closer. I'd say it worked out pretty well.
Well, good job. Do you want to mention any sponsors or anything before we let you go?
Nope, I still don't have any sponsors. Racing for myself, having fun while I'm doing it.
That's good. Thanks for talking.
Thank you.
Well, we've got time for one more, and I know I'm going to be blamed for being partial, but he did lead a lap, and I think that's worth getting his thoughts on things. We've got Richard Losburn here. Richard, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Richard, the end of the race didn't quite go how you wanted, but you did briefly get into the lead. What happened in your incident that took you out of that?
Okay, what happened was I got into the lead because for some reason James was slow through the carousel there, or just before the carousel, and I passed him, and I was then in the lead. But a couple of laps later, may have been 1 or 2 laps later, Chris Moran caught up with me. I was back in second place because James had passed me again. And then we were coming through the left-hander, that really tight hairpin, and I knew he was right on my tail, and I tried as best I could to keep left, but that is such a tight turn. You've got to go wide if you've got to keep your speed. So I went wide, and he hit me from behind. I don't think it was his fault, and then that started a chain reaction.
Yeah, we saw that one go down, and I had mentioned in the track guide that how tricky it is to come out of that exit of that corner just because the car gets so light. Well, before we let you go, though, do you want to thank any sponsors or make any shout-outs?
Yes, I want to thank my teammates, James Stevenson, and also commiserations to Stefan. He didn't have a good race either. So AMS didn't have such a great race, although we did still get a podium. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and that's worth celebrating at the least. Thanks for coming and talking to us.
Cheers.
Well, it's been a pretty good race, and we're getting the music coming up, so we're going to wrap it up here. I want to thank a few people. We want to thank Safecraft Racing, once again, the sponsor, for doing everything they can to help make this league possible. We want to thank Wes Eric, the organizer of this league. And we also want to thank some of the software and hardware that we use to make this stream. iRacing.com, XSplit, Twitch TV, Audio Technica, and AverMedia. Also, I want to thank the team, Giancarlo, we've got Ayrton, and of course Kevin, all making this thing possible, and our spotter who is in the background, Sam, today. Sam Ryman was helping us out with details. We want to make sure that you get all the Global Sim Racing that you can, so make sure and check out our website at www.globalsimracingchannel.com. We're also on Twitter at GSR Channel, and then we're on Facebook at facebook.com/Global Sim Racing Channel. We also want to thank Erik Ekholm, who does a lot of our music. You can also find his music on TV commercials, movie trailers, and iTunes, and even Spotify. If you like it, tell him where you heard it at ericekholm.com. Thanks to Dexter Britain, who also provides us with our recognizable broadcast song. He has a lot of great music as well with NASA, TED Talks, and even McLaren. Listen or buy his music at dexterbritain.co.uk. As we mentioned before, the next race is at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and that is April 27th, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. And once again, our next broadcast will be next week. The Blondies series will be at, I'm seeing Lime Rock Park, but I'm pretty sure that is incorrect. I will get that for you. Thanks again for watching for us. Hope that you tune in. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.